Greetings, travelers. This one is designation LVT-502, formerly a domestic service doll, now refitted for arcane combat scenarios and spectral intervention in service to the Lady of Black Veils. Its companions call it Lavitts. This one hopes your souls rest easy as you enjoy this campaign spotlight. Beep boop.
Hey there, operatives and mail carriers.
In this week's Spotlight, we're chatting with Satah about self-paced and epistolary games.
Let's roll initiative.
L. 45 hours into my stay on QD5, and I already have a discovery to report to you. Satisfying our mutual hunger for information is, unfortunately, the only pleasure in this discovery. I'm typing this in the off-cycle of the electrode bath they carried me directly to when I landed. Evidently, they haven't prioritized building stasis recoveries on any of the moons in this sector, just the planets. Yes, it's very nostalgic. Why am I doing it at all? My journey, unlike yours, was too short for stasis, right? Otherwise, I would have spent those weeks laughing with you as you did calisthenics, rather than at you. The crises, as far as I can tell, were threefold. A static event in an asteroid field damaged the life support in my shuttle so badly that I had to go into an emergency preservation pod. A storm collapsed the supports under some water tanks and spilled a full quarter of their potable water. The breakdown in filtration I was brought here to deal with was either drastically underreported or escalated more quickly than expected, and there's no knowing when it'll be replaced. So the discovery I mentioned. A previously unknown level of abject misery, staring at the characteristically relentless lapping of this lunar lake in post-stasis dehydration while forced to stick to a water ration. I feel terrible, physically and otherwise. There's nothing I could have done differently, but I was supposed to be able to get to work immediately. I don't think I could even zip up my own coveralls in this state. The only thing to do is rest. It's vulnerable. My hands are too clean. I know you understand. As far as I can tell, the big boss around here refuses to call for emergency rations. It sounds like she's very determined to prove they can make it on their own. She's going to visit me whenever the muscles of my tongue find it in themselves to contract in the ways necessary for speech, and I'll find out more then. I hope your trip was less eventful than mine. There are character limits to these things, so maybe just tell me about your favorite enemy you've already made rather than all of them. I hope they are at least worthy opponents, my dear friend. With love, Lev.
Satah, that was incredible.
Thank you.
Welcome to Campaign Spotlight.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
It's great to get to chat. Do you mind introducing yourself for the listeners?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm Satah. I edit and design and podcast about TTRPGs. I'm also a musician and a podcast producer generally, I suppose. So I'm out and about. I'm around in the space.
Hell yeah. Can you, I guess, tell us about what kind of games you play and what your experience is like with TTRPGs in general?
Yeah, a lot, I guess. I dabbled with whatever edition it was of D&D when I was in high school, and then probably after the Adventure Zone got popular, I hopped into like a 5e campaign, and then eventually I played The Quiet Year and Fiasco, probably inspired by Friends at the Table for both And that sort of like both of those combined sort of like exploded my mind into exploring like, oh my God, TTRPGs can be so many things. And so for the past like decade or so, I've just sort of been in the like indie TTRPG minds, I guess. Play a lot of the past few years especially have been a lot of GM-less games, but I think I burned myself out on them because I love GM-less games, and also sometimes the shared responsibility that is necessary at the table. I just kind of got exhausted and I wanted to only do one of the parts, GM or play, and so took a break from that. I was playing a lot of Mothership, and I'm kind of getting back into just, I will play pretty much anything. I will even, with love, play Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, but not super often, and usually only socially.
This is a safe space for D&D hot takes for sure.
Thank you.
It's fascinating to me to hear that. I think this is the first time I've heard anyone say that they felt burnt out by GM-less games because of that multiple roles. Do you mind talking about that a little bit more?
Yeah, it's one of those things that is hard to separate because it's also something that happened, during lockdown eras of the pandemic and that kind of thing. So there's probably other emotional volatility going on that wasn't specifically about that, but it was just
mood,
that when you are playing a GM-less game and you have a tendency to really want to manage the emotions of the people who are at a table with you and make sure they're having a really good time, I think that you end up, if you're me, putting a lot of pressure on yourself to sort of like GM, but without the title and without like the expectation. And so it becomes like trying to secretly GM while still maintaining the tone of GM-lessness, like inviting collaboration, but secretly trying to make sure things are working. And just like, right. I love GM-less games. I think one of the problems really that I was having that I didn't realize until much later was that I was just playing with the wrong tables. A GM-less game, you do, just like any game, you need the right table for a game to work. I was playing with people who were a little more passive or not as excited about collaboration in the same way that I was. And so I was having to like extend a lot more energy than I was necessarily getting back. And the thing about like a GM'd game is that the social roles are a lot more clearly delineated. And so that is not necessarily as stressful. Like sometimes I don't like that. Sometimes those social roles really frustrate me, which is why I love GM-less games so much. But hey, they're there, and that is very comforting sometimes. So
I really like that perspective as someone who like I play a lot of, I basically only play games where I GM.
Yeah.
Because and partially this is just because I'm like a hateful scheduling gremlin, and I'm the one who is like dragging all my friends into the Google Calendar wastelands and everything.
Yes.
And there is that aspect. Yeah, you're right about the social roles, because it's like the nature of our friendship when we're not playing the game is not that I am like the cruel taskmaster, but in game there has to be some amount of like, well, sometimes someone needs to manage the table.
Yeah.
And it is nice and make sure that everyone's having a good time and that everyone feels safe and that they're getting their moments in the spotlight. And it kind of feels better when that is made explicit by the rule set that you're playing with.
Yeah, and I think, a huge part of it for me was just sort of like leveling up my communication skills generally. I think getting a lot better at being explicit in communication away from the table helps at the table. And so it just also, I learned that sometimes what I want to do at a GM-less game is sit down and be like, hey, how does everybody feel about me suggesting this? I'm feeling like this is a little directionless. Is everybody else good? Or I'm worried that your character hasn't been on screen enough. Yes. Are you happy with that? And sometimes they're like, yes, oh my God, I'm so tired. Like I'm exhausted. I don't want to be, I want to be here. I want to play, but I don't want to make big choices tonight. So, and as long as I just have to like believe that people can take care of themselves and like allow them to do that, which like, yeah, there's definitely a little bit more of that pressure in a GM-less game without those, that structure of who to turn to when there's a sudden silence at the table and that kind of thing.
Right. I think especially you hit the nail on the head with the directionlessness. One of the reasons that I tend to play games that are GM'd is sometimes GM-less games do feel a little bit like we're hanging out, we're doing a little bit of improvising. At the end of the evening, it's hard to identify like a story thing that happened. And maybe having someone in a role where they need to move the story along. I guess you could do that without having a GM. But explicitly identifying it does make it maybe a little bit more natural.
Yeah, to be completely honest, I think that a better title for GM-less games would be GM full games. I think that everybody is GMing and has to be prepared to do that. And if you're not, then or at least a plurality of people at the table have to be prepared to do that. Because if everybody's playing a little passively, and huge parts of it are just breaking out of the patterns of like, I have learned this is what it is to play a game. I do something,
Right.
I react to things, I wait for somebody else to present me things, and then I react to it. And it's learning like, ooh, wait, I can push here. I can set things up to react to, or set things up for people to react to. And yeah, you'll definitely find like different systems have different amounts of support for that. And I tend to feel similarly that I prefer, as a general rule, supportive systems that have like tables and mechanics and things that you can turn to when you're like, I don't know what to do next. The book will help you. That's my preference across like everything.
Oh, hard same. And I think like the opposite of books like that is how some people experience professional actual plays, where they will see it as there is a GM, and this is someone who is paid full time to write stories, who comes up with like moments that the players then like. The players just sit and wait for 45 minutes, 90 minutes, and then when their moment in the spotlight comes, they react to it and they kind of give it their all, which is really fun to watch, but it's not necessarily the same when you're playing it at home.
Yeah, it isn't. And I think it's funny because in part because I've played so many GM-less games for so many years, and even just I play a lot of like Powered by the Apocalypse games where there is both a mechanical and just a cultural expectation that players will be contributing more to like the world building and that kind of thing. I can get really impatient when I end up in a game where the expectation is a little more like the GM is going to sit here and talk to you and then you are going to play in their world. Like, I definitely can get a little bit like, okay, well, but where's the thing that I get to do? Like, so I just have to be a player. Like, ooh, do you need me to play any NPCs? No, because you're like a normal, just regular GM and you want to play all the NPCs. Okay, I'll sit over here then. I guess. I'm used to having my fingers in more pies, I think.
I definitely know the feeling. I mean, I think this is just, you mentioned previously, like, kind of playing with the table who has similar expectations to you.
Yeah.
Because we've definitely had guests on the show who are like, I control everything. When the players are not moving through the story fast enough, I put them on a train and get them to the next destination. And I've actually talked to the players from that game outside of the podcast, and they love it.
Yeah.
They're thrilled when that happens. They're like, I love just like going over, eating pizza, and like kind of listening to the story being told and sometimes interacting. For me, and it sounds like for you, that's not the optimum, but like that is just a way to play games, I guess.
It is. And for me, again, with just the active communication, the thing I'm trying to be a lot better at doing is checking what people want out of games, because I will get stressed. I run these regular indie TTRPG events locally in Ottawa, and mostly we've been doing GM-less games just because I don't have another GM in my pocket. So if too many people show up for one group, we're going to split. I don't have somebody else to be like, hey, go run this game. So I've mostly been doing GM-less games, and I'll get worried because I'll feel like this player isn't you know, contributing, not in a way where they are like negatively influencing the experience at all, but they're not like, they don't have as much agency in the story. Maybe they're upset with this, and I've tried to make it a habit of talking to those people and be like, hey, do you enjoy the way you're playing? Because if you enjoy just like chilling out, we're all good. I won't stress about it. Right. You can do whatever you want. I'm only going to be in my head if I'm worried that you're not getting what you want out of this. And obviously you can't have all types at all tables for all games, but it is more possible than I think I would have expected just by having those really clear like expectations and those conversations about what you even want out of games and that kind of thing.
Right, which is harder, I think, at a drop-in night than it is if you're playing a GMless game with friends over the course of months or years.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, GMless games, a lot of them are shorter term. I do have to shout out, I guess over the course of early 2021, played several sessions of a game of Galactic, which is a Belonging Outside Belonging GMless Star Wars style game. And we played, I think, 12 sessions of that in total. Plus, there were 4 of us in that game. We would all play side games. Like, we would do duet games separately from the game and come back with play reports. We played a like prequel game in Masks, which is a superhero powered by the apocalypse TTRPG, except I GM'd that, and instead of, standard superheroes, they were the serial numbers filed off Jedi kind of thing. And we also, as a group, wrote 150,000 words of fiction in the universe that we shared with each other, and a full third of that was smut, featuring the characters. And so, yeah, a lot of those games are pretty short term, but they don't have to be if you are all insane enough and having your own little like 4-person fandom for a thing that just drives you forward.
I feel like a lot of lockdown era games felt a little bit like that.
Yeah, like, oh, this was the only I would write fiction. It's not even fan fiction because there's no IP. I was writing fiction of the game, but sometimes just not canon fiction, so I don't even know what that would be called. Like on my phone at work. It was all I thought about, and it was the only thing I had going on in my life other than work, and I think that was true for all of us. So
there was work, and then there was just like sitting at home on Zoom playing games, and that was kind of end of list.
Yeah.
I guess, in what era did you start playing, because you've also gotten really into, like, self-paced and epistolary games, where you're fully just playing one at a time and handing things off. I guess, when did you get into those games as well?
Yeah, I think it actually began with those Galactic side games. Cool. That... One of the there's a couple of duet games by Riley Rethal, who also created Galactic, that are called It's a Long Time Coming and It's Been a Long, Long Time, which are not epistolary games, but they are 2-player games. And one of the other players from that Galactic game and I, we were flirting by having our characters flirt for sure, and we played a duet game. And then this player and I sort of like wanted to keep playing duet games together, but scheduling even for 2 people can sometimes be a nightmare. And I don't remember exactly what game it was. It actually might have been the game that the monologue that I did at the top of the show was inspired by. There is a designer named Daniel Tozier, who creates these games that are called Adventure by Mail games. The gameplay loop of them is you create a little deck of cards. You pull like 12 cards, and you will take a card off of the top of the deck. It will give you an event to react to and sort of a mood based on the suit and the value of the card, and you'll write a letter based on that. And then you send that letter to the person you're playing with, and they do the same thing with their own deck. And so you are having this correspondence back and forth, that is like inspired by these prompts, which I really love, because I don't love like just open field. There are epistolary games that will basically just say like write letters back and forth, end of rules. These ones I think do a really good balance of guiding and prompting, but still having a very open field for creativity. Like, for instance, the thing that I wrote at the top of the episode was you start by creating a character, you pick a couple of traits, which I rolled for because I hate choosing things. I roll for everything. And then I rolled like charismatic and guarded, and I rolled a profession that was an engineer, and I rolled the landscape of the like space colony that I was being sent off to was coastal. And I rolled that the government of it had a single leader. And I did the same thing to sort of, if it were a real game, the other person would do the same thing, but I just sort of made their traits to see like, who is the character who I'm writing to? And then pulled a card, and it says like, this card is a 3, so you're going to write about a weather event, and it's a spade, so it should have themes of boredom or exhaustion or being overwhelmed or in despair or something. And it's the first letter, so make sure that you mention like where you even are. And that's sort of like the basic thing, and it just guides you into writing, and then you send it off, and then the other person does the same thing, and you just go back and forth and sort of reply to each other and keep talking. And I love them because I love games. I love playing games. I love reading games. I love interacting with game mechanics. It is something that I will just think of. I am so annoying to like watch anything with, because I'll just go silent for like 17 minutes and then be like, you could totally turn this into a game. Here's what the playbooks would be. Here's what like the tokens would represent. Here's what you would roll for. It's just like game mechanics are what I filter an enormous amount of my human experience through. And so I just found that solo and sort of like these games that you can do on your own time were a really great way to fill more of my life with games that doesn't include having to schedule them, is the main thing, really.
I am, as someone who schedules an ongoing TTRPG with 5 players and also this podcast, I am so sympathetic to the nightmare of scheduling. I guess I'm also curious, what's the last thing you watched that you felt like you were building a game for?
Oh, I mean, I think it's really everything. I've been rewatching Andor and like a bunch of Star Wars stuff, and there are already so many Star Wars games that it doesn't come up as often. But I think that I've also been watching a lot of just like 60s and 70s B horror movies. Cool. And like I have a really big softness for games that dive really heavily into genre and sort of have like mechanized genre tropes. And so I think it's just, there's been a lot of that where I'm looking at, like, I'm watching these movies that I'm only watching because they're available for free through the library streaming service, and being like, yeah, I could write a table that is like the mutant bees or ants or cockroaches or whatever are taking over the town, and they're doing it through mind control or poison or whatever. Just figuring out ways to sort of auto-generate those plots by condensing the tropes down into a table or a mechanic.
I really like that concept, and you described sometimes. You said that sometimes when you're watching these shows, the game mechanics you have in mind also include things like resources and scarcity, and I thought this was interesting because one thing that to me distinguishes like a game from like an improv exercise or a writing exercise is this notion of trade-offs or scarcity, right? Where if the game is doing nothing but giving prompts for like, me and my friends to riff off of, or something that I should write, that's cool. And sometimes those prompts are really fun, but it feels less like a game if there's not decisions being made about something that's scarce, or doing one thing means giving up on something else. I guess how do you draw that distinction between what constitutes a game and what constitutes a writing prompt generator, if that makes sense?
Yeah, that's really, really interesting. I think I definitely have a slightly broader view. I'm thinking of one of my favorite games of all time, Fiasco, which
Yes.
it's mostly just improv, right? It is mostly sit down and play out scenes for a couple of hours and that kind of thing. And I was thinking, like, why is it that why do I consider that a game? And sure, there's the element of like, well, I'm having playtime with my friends, but I think also part of it is it isn't even, there is randomness in Fiasco in that you have randomly generated character type things and that kind of stuff, but I think it's almost that like elements of it being out of your control in some way, in that other people are making decisions for you of like whether a scene went well or poorly. It's definitely more of a like gradient than I think something I would be able to just strictly say in a binary way. One is a game and one is just improv, but there are games that I think are too improv heavy and not mechanized enough for my preferences. So clearly I have some thoughts about it. I don't know exactly what they are.
Yeah, your point is well taken. I think when you're playing with a large group of people, there is that sense that like you do get some paths are foreclosed or some trade-offs are being made just by handing it off to the fact that there is such a large group you're playing with. And like when there's a big table, even if the rules are pretty improv-y, it's not like, oh, anything can happen next, because it won't be your turn to steer for quite a while. But to me anyway, when it's one or two people playing, I guess it's tough for me sometimes to understand where the line is between this is generating a writing prompt, especially with a game that is, a solo game, or a game that is really heavy on you were going to write a lot introspectively. It's sometimes hard for me to understand where it stops being a writing prompt and starts being a game, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think the real answer is it's both, often, in a lot of ways. I think similarly to like when you are playing sort of a more standard TRPG, like, are scenes where you're just like role playing back and forth a game, or has that become like an improv prompt, right? Or is it just when you're rolling the dice that it's a game, or is it all part of the game? And I think it's like it's all of those things, and it definitely like probably gets more heavy when you're talking an epistolary game, like you're writing these things back and forth. It is much more like collaborative writing than it is sort of a standard like let's roll some dice style of game. But I think that because it has those like outside influences of like the prompts and the cards, sometimes there's dice to roll, whatever, all of these games do things differently. It becomes something that's a little bit not above, because it's not that it's better, it becomes something slightly different than your standard just like play by post classic style forum role play, where you're just like free forming whatever. I'm just going to write 1,000 words in a post and then you'll respond to it and we'll do that, whatever, completely free form. It's like adding those structures in of like, there is something you have to respond to, particularly in the game I was talking about, or that style of game. The Adventure by Mail games have like 4 aces in your little deck. When you hit an ace, there is a specific story beat where it'll be like, let's say there's an Adventure by Mail game where you are playing writers who work for a like supernatural investigation magazine, and
Cool.
Most of your cards are just like talking back and forth. Here's something that happened. I went into town today and I ran into this person. I found a clue. I don't know. And then when you pull a specific ace, it's like, hey, you're finding the monster. Like you now have to write a letter about like finding the monster. Here's what you found for it. Your next ace is like and I'm absolutely, these aren't actually the aces that are in the game Strange Places, but it's that sort of thing where like you will hit points where the game tells you this is what you do next. How you do it is completely up to you, which is like, I think, more gamey than just, I mean, it's game mechanics are a poem structure to me, right? Like it's writing a sonnet is different than writing just a free form slam poem, because there are just like, you have to hit certain meters, certain types of poems have to rhyme in certain ways. To me, that's what game mechanics are all about, is like providing that structure, the freedom of limitations, the both struggle and freedom of the limitations, having to do something a certain way, but also like knowing that you have to do something a certain way and therefore being enabled to like do creative problem solving rather than just being like, I can do anything. Oh God, that's too many options. That's where it's like, that's the beauty of gameplay to me. And so I know that that's a very meandering answer with a lot of parts, but like, yeah, it's both. And I think that somewhere in there was a distillation of why I think it's still a game.
I love the poetry analogy, like sincerely.
Thanks.
No, I think that's a great way to put it. Yeah. And yeah, more concretely, a game where the deck of cards is not just giving you, here's what you write about next, but it's also kind of giving you that macro pacing, and like,
Yeah.
here's when like the story beats of the overall narrative come in. I definitely get how that is not just helping you write a cool scene, but also helping you write a series of scenes that, when strung together, you can kind of look back and be like, oh, we told the full story together.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Or in your case, we wrote 150,000 words, of which 60,000 was smut together.
Yeah, that's also an option.
I guess I'm also curious because at the extreme of this, and some of the games that you played on Folio feel more like this. The games are really just they're solo. It's your journaling, and you're building the whole story on your own, subject to some rules.
Yeah.
I guess with an epistolary game, there is the sense of, well, I'm writing, but I'm also writing in a way that's inviting another player to like collaborate with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm giving them interesting like openings and I don't want to say plot hooks, but definitely I'm saying things that I know that they can bounce off of and respond to.
Yeah.
How, I guess, with a solo game, and I haven't played that many solo games, candidly, so I'm really curious as to your perspective. I guess, how does it feel when you're not providing those hooks and you're not thinking about that collaboration?
Yeah. So part of the struggle for me about talking about solo games is that the breadth of solo games is as broad as the breadth of TTRPGs generally. There are these journaling games that are very much closer to writing prompts, but there are also significantly more mechanically intensive ones. And then you'll also find, especially in sort of like solo game Reddit communities particularly,
Right.
people who are playing just any TTRPG but doing it alone. You'll see somebody like playing not a lot of like 5e, but sometimes Pathfinder, often I don't remember what the officially licensed Star Wars games are, Fantasy Flight maybe, which often that will take the form of like, you'll find things that are often called oracles online that are usually like lists of things to interpret. One of the most common structures of those being like, okay, roll a die. You got a 1. Cool. No, but. So the thing you wanted to happen doesn't happen, but here's a thing that happens as well. Or no, and the thing that you wanted to happen doesn't happen, plus something worse is going to happen. Just sort of like, it's still introducing, that type of gameplay is still really introducing the like randomness when it comes to how do I solve problems or how do I resolve uncertainty in my own gameplay. But doing it in a system that I can't imagine. I personally have never tried to play one of those like big crunchy GM'd games just by myself because it just seems a little overwhelming. You have to track so many things. But for some people, that's what they want. I know people who play solo games primarily in the form of like solo war games. Basically, they'll set up minis and I'm not going to be able to remember the name, but there's a couple of these beautiful space themed solo games that are very much aimed at war game audiences that are like, here's a scenario for you to play out by yourself, and there's randomization, different like trails that you can follow and that kind of thing. I got so distracted talking about the different types of solo games, I forgot what your question was. Sorry.
This is absolutely fascinating.
I think it was
I'm
like...
just sitting here listening, being like, this is so cool. I think the question was about the idea that when you're not collaborating anymore.
Oh, yes.
And when you're not doing it with an aim to like share it with someone to bounce off of, how does that feel?
Yeah, so admittedly, I have always loved the idea of solo games. I read a lot of them. I didn't play a lot of them for a very long time. And part of that is just my own, again, sort of personal neuroses that I have, which is that I would sit down to play a solo game and my brain would go, you have enough energy right now to play a game, but you're not writing instead or doing something like more productive. Interesting. Okay. And I would be like, no, never mind. I didn't even want to do that. I'm just going to do something else. But like I have a podcast where I play solo games, and
yes,
a huge part of the reason that I started that was because I wanted to play more solo games, but I knew that I needed something bigger. I needed an external motivation in order to allow myself to do that, because that is just how my unfortunate brain works. And so for me, as much as I love the concept of solo games, I am somebody who like needs a social or performative aspect. I mean, in order to do anything is the thing with me also. Like that is true of me for almost anything. I'm really terrible. I don't do anything that I don't share. It is something that has been a problem my whole life. So that's its own thing. I know people who play solo games just for themselves. And the way that they sort of use that to connect with other people when they want to is that they just do play reports. Like they'll be like, oh, I played a game, here's what happened in it. Or they might say, look at this journal entry that I wrote today, wasn't it really lovely? But a lot of them really are just, I think that they are people who can find a lot of fulfillment in doing something on their own time just for themselves. And I think that's really beautiful. It's not me. I wish it were me. I think a more self-actualized version of myself. Yeah. And
Riley and I are both like laughing over here, looking at each other and being like, yeah, that's not us either.
Hey, Riley here, asking for your support in keeping Campaign Spotlight running. Jake and I started this podcast to showcase the creativity of home TTRPG campaigns. Since then, we've released over 60 episodes, including on-site recordings, historical deep dives, and longer, in-depth conversations like this one. We'd love to keep sharing new and interesting ways to play TTRPGs. If you enjoy the show, consider becoming a Patreon at patreon.com/campaignspotlight. Your support enables us to keep trying new ways to cover TTRPG gameplay, and also guarantees that DICE will deliver a tragic NPC death exactly when it's dramatically appropriate.
It's like, I mean... The other thing is that I personally get different things out of different types of solo games. So journaling games specifically, the type that are going to like prompt you to do something, that is very much like, ooh, here's a fun way for me to, I like writing. But I also, with the podcast, I get to do something that is even a little bit lower effort, which is just talk through my ideas often. It's sort of like look at a prompt and go, oh, well, here's how I think that would go. And I'll tell you a little bit of this story kind of out loud. And that's really lovely for me. if I were to play a game on my own time, not recorded, I would go, I think, for the more mechanically intensive ones. There's a game called Furia that I just played that the episodes will be out by now, which is great. That is like, how would I describe the mechanics? It's a little bit sort of like in the OSR means too many things. In what you might call the new school, old school revival set, the sort of like your motherships, you're into the odds, that kind of thing. Relatively simple, high brutality, high fatality. Rules really mean something. There's a big consequence. I love those type of games on my own time. I'm drawn to more because I love rolling dice. I know that a lot of people in sort of my circles of like journaling games and indie games love diceless stuff. I even love a lot of diceless stuff, but I love rolling dice. I love rolling dice. Same. I love it when the dice tell me what's happening next. It's great. And in that, the thing that I get from that is that the collaboration is between me and the game rather than me and another player. Like, I even think that when I'm sitting down to play a game with other people, I actually think there are at least 3 presences at that table, which is, the players, the GM, and the game, or the players and the game. I think that the game is always like adding to that experience, or should be, ideally, I think. And so for solo games, I think there are people who get into solo games because they don't have, and this is going to sound considerably more negative than I mean it to, they don't have a sort of like intrinsic creativity that allows them to like sit down and just tell a story. And solo games enable you to do that, because that is what a game does. Is it helps you to like figure out what could happen next, what would be interesting, and that kind of thing. For me, I'm a writer. I've always been a writer. If I wanted to just write, I would sit down and write. Well, theoretically, I could sit down and just write if I wanted to write and had the motivation to write. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And so I need a game to be a little bit more active in what it's offering to me, for it to sort of like bring something to the table, as it were. Like, I want it to be a really active participant in my experience, which usually involves having a lot of tables to roll on if I am not sure what to do, or if I walk into a room and I'm like, who's in this room? The game has an answer for me somewhere. And I'm still getting that joy of like being surprised and having somebody suggest something that I wouldn't necessarily have thought of. It's just that it's coming from paper and dice rather than from somebody else, like a person saying it.
Right. I mean, there is probably a person at the top of the chain somewhere who wrote those tables, and maybe in a way you're playing with them, I guess. But yeah, your point is well taken. That does give it that that, I don't want to say scarcity, but that like options are getting closed off by those dice rolls. And I think I get what you mean about how that makes it feel more like a game.
Yeah.
Because the games that you play, I mean, the ones on the podcast, you kind of are playing for an audience there. It is maybe different than it would be just solo. But the ways that the game encourages you to respond, I guess, in respond in ways that move the story along, I think is really helpful to think of this as a game more than a writing exercise.
Yeah.
You mentioned this earlier in the context of your long-running Star Wars campaign. One thing that I'm also kind of optimistic about is the ability to incorporate some of these writing-heavy games or like nest them in like a longer, like more traditional multiplayer TTRPG.
Oh, absolutely. I think a huge part of this comes from often listening to podcasts that will play different games for different things, like the aforementioned Friends at the Table.
Yes.
And just reading a lot of games and really prioritizing games that want to tell specific stories over trying to tell every story in one game. Yes. That like really encourages me to always like, if we hit a point in a game and we need to tell a different type of story, amazing. Let's reach for another game. Let's pull it in. Let's like the game that we're playing right now doesn't have mechanics or time for the party just got separated for 6 months for some reason. What do we talk about in that time? Let's play an epistolary game to just like for the next couple of weeks, let's write some letters back and forth and say like that's what happened in those 6 months. And it just like I love chaining games together a lot to help like develop different parts of the world and that kind of thing. And I think I relatively recent, I wish I could remember what game I played, but I know that I was in, I think it might have been in my Monster Hearts game. It might have been in a game that I'm helping to playtest for a friend that's also a monster themed, powered by the apocalypse, very different. I realized that I just had some blanks about my character that weren't getting filled in at the table, and that I was really coming up against a wall, and I just pulled out a journaling game and just like, I didn't even write anything down. I just pulled out a journaling game and I went through the prompts, rolled some dice, pulled some cards, answered some stuff in character, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. I just locked in parts of my character's backstory in a way that I would have had no reason to get to by myself before. And I like toddled over to my group and I was like, hey, I just figured out this character's big secret, just so you all know.
What journaling game did you use for that? Because that sounds awesome.
I will have to try and find my notes because I'm not sure. Okay. I have so many and they get so mixed in with games that I'm playing for the podcast. So hopefully I'll be able to remember. But there are a lot of games that sometimes you have to do some tweaking to sort of fit them into like a character backstory thing. But I think especially if you let yourself just take what's useful from games and discard the rest to sort of like explore what the questions. I mean, it's like doing tarot for your TTRPG character of like, yeah, what does this make me think of? Cool. This is now true about the universe. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah, so and that's really helpful to think about, you know, this idea that you can really enhance your character's backstory by just finding a game that is really about fleshing out one character's history. I guess I'm curious what your advice would be for GMs who are running like, you know, a real classical campaign with a strong GM and a bunch of players, and they want to incorporate more writing elements, more reflective elements, and maybe even some epistolary elements in their campaign. Like, how would you suggest they go about doing that in terms of systems or just in terms of logistics?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think part of it depends, of course, on how much time you want to put into this outside of sessions. Because if you, as a GM, want to encourage development by, like, let's say, writing letters to a specific character or playing a game with them to sort of like develop a thing on the side, obviously that's a lot of investment of time outside of your game, when, you know, you're probably already doing a lot of prep and that kind of thing. I think if you're prepared to read it or hear play reports, just encouraging characters to do specific journaling style games. I think especially if you can find a game that has an interesting theme and ask all of your players to just do a few rounds of it as their characters, or if you find a game that explores there are sort of more like world building style games sometimes. So let's say that you want all of your characters are from different parts of the world, and maybe you want them to develop a little bit of like, what's the city that you're from, like, maybe have all of your players play the same game, just a very short version of it, and then come to you sort of with a play report of like, here's what I learned, and then you can incorporate that. I think in a lot of ways it's similar to any advice for trying to encourage more collaboration or collaborative play with your players, in that it depends on like your time investment and their time investments, and also your ability / interest in weaving that stuff in.
Right.
Because like you have to be definitely very prepared for players to bring something unexpected to you about your world, right? Which I think is something that is true of most good GMs, that they're prepared to like, because you have to be prepared for a die to roll in a way you didn't expect, or a player to do something. No plan actually survives contact with the table, like ever. And so you always have to be prepared for that. But there is a little bit of trust in being like, here, go off and do something and bring it to me. For me, that's a huge fun. I actually like, I ran a Dungeon World game years ago. Oh my God, almost a decade ago at this point. Oh, sorry, I felt that. It was a decade ago, wasn't it? It was a decade ago. Okay. So I don't think that it's an explicit mechanic in Dungeon World. I think I stole it from another game that I don't remember. But at the start of every session, I did what we called love letters, where at the start of every session, I would have a short vignette of each character. I'd say like, okay, you were studying really late. You had a dream. Here's what happened in the dream. What childhood friend did you see in the dream? And then they'd tell me that, and I would say, okay, great. Here's what they told you. Roll 2d6, the standard powered by the apocalypse roll. Roll 2d6. On a 6-, you wake up from that dream miserable. You didn't sleep. You can't stop thinking about this person, and you're super distracted. On a 7 to 9, you wake up and you're like a little nostalgic. Like, it's distracting, but it's nice. You're thinking about it. But it's bringing you some joy. On a 10+, you wake up, oh, you're so inspired, you're going to reach out to that person, you remember something they told you that solves everything, kind of thing. Right. And I would do just a short one of those for each player, which obviously is coming more from the GM side than the player side. But I think something like that, you can encourage that in between session prep from your players as well. I think have them bring a short vignette and ask a question to another player, even say like, oh, we were camping last night, and I came over to your tent. Like, why were you so mad? Why were you so mad when I came over to your tent? And have the other player be like, oh, let me think about it. What would have made me mad yesterday? And just like encouraging them to think about it and prepare a little bit of something to show and tell for the class, I guess, is like the same thing. And it's just then, looking to journal games and duet games and these like epistolary games and that kind of thing for like just making it not quite as open a field, because there are a lot of people who either never want to just think of an idea out of nothing, or might just be really busy at work and like tired of making decisions all of the time and be like, hey, can you just give me a little bit more to bounce off of? Which is where those like prompts will come in handy, and you can sort of repurpose prompts from all sorts of games to like just sort of meet the circumstances that you're looking to like develop and explore, I guess.
I really like that approach. Do you have any games that you would recommend for, or even just prompt generation engines that aren't quite games that you would recommend?
The adventure by mail games that I've mentioned a bunch of times, right. They're so good. They're just awesome. So good. The prompts are incredible. I love the way that they intersect with each other. I would look at there's a game called Alone Among the Stars that is sort of one of the solo games, in that like there are about 300 games on itch that are hacks of Alone Among the Stars, and looking at Alone Among the Stars hacks, and just there's going to be one that's thematically fitting to what you want to explore at this point. there's a lot of them, and looking at those because they have a tendency to like have really evocative prompts that are pulling information off of cards and dice. And if you have a D6 and you have a deck of cards, you have like an absurd amount of information that you can pull from the randomness of those things.
Right.
And Alone Among the Stars games take really good advantage of those. So I would look into Alone Among the Stars hacks, and I think just generally looking for oracles on itch and that kind of thing. There are a lot of solo play oracles that have event prompts and suggestions of sort of where to go, but it is one of those things where really I think sometimes the thing that you can just go on itch.io and look up vampire and you'll get 75 different games that, I mean, and it takes a little bit of like sifting to find solo stuff or epistolary stuff because people aren't always the best at tagging.
Oh gosh.
Wait, oh my god,
I've noticed this. Yes.
Literally I spent like 3 hours today cleaning up metadata for my music library, so I have a lot of strong opinions about this, particularly today. But yeah, there are
I've watched Riley do the same thing. So.
Yep. there are so many games out there that like are so small and just targeted at such a specific thing that it can be overwhelming for sure to look through them. But if you just do it in like little chunks and you just look for very specific things and then sort of just like as you need it, find something new and explore something new.
Right.
That's, I think, the best way to to sort of go about it.
Oh, this is awesome advice. Thank you so much.
For sure.
Do you have any media that isn't games that you would recommend that people, or that you've gone to for inspiration, perhaps?
I'm a big I think I just absorb everything type of person. So I don't have a lot of specific recommendations. I guess my specific recommendation is not only like consume media in the genre that you're interested in exploring, but you need to especially watch movies and read books that are fine. Not bad, but not really good. You need books and movies that have something in them that is incredible and are just okay otherwise, because that, I think, is the gunpowder that will light a spark in your brain where you'll just go like, that one thing was really cool. I wish that they'd done this with it. Ooh, wait, what if they'd done this with it? Oh, it would have been really amazing, actually, if they'd done this with it. So I really strongly encourage you to watch very middle of the road movies, because I think that they're more inspiring than good movies. Unless maybe I'm just a contrarian by nature. That's true. I am a contrarian by nature, so I know that helps, but I do genuinely think that will help.
I love that advice. Thank you. Thank you so much. Do you have anything that you'd like our listeners to check out, or any projects you're working on you'd like to share?
Yeah, absolutely. I make a podcast called Folio that is multi-guest actual play of solo games or just self-paced games generally, which isn't like a real category, but it's one that I'm pretending exists so that I can explore it. So sort of solo games, single-player games, journaling games, epistolary games, serial journaling games, all those sort of things. It's great because it is a TTRPG actual play podcast where I never have to schedule anybody to be on a call at the same time. Wow, highly recommend if you can make it happen. But really, it's a great show. I'm really, really happy with everywhere that it's gone. We do a new game every like 3 to 5 weeks. It's anthology style, so you can always just drop in on a new series. Anything that looks interesting, any guests that sort of appeal to you or games that appeal to you, drop in and out whenever. I am also a musician. I put out a couple of albums this year / the end of last year as People You Meet Outside of Bars, which is sort of a like singer-songwriter-y big feelings project that I've been doing for quite a while. I also make experimental, mostly improvised synth noise and spoken word poetry as piloting the animal. Those are my 2 projects. You can kind of find the breadth of my work at my website, gaygothvibes.online. And also follow me, presumably, social media, the state of it, I don't know, but I assume I'm on Blue Sky at Satah.gaygothvibes. Nope. I'm on Blue Sky at posetachips.gaygothvibes.online. And I think that's it. Oh, I make games as well, I guess. You can look at my itch. I make a bunch of very stupid, affectionate tone, mostly cyberpunk bullshit heist games at Satah.itch.io.
Thank you so much. Yeah, we'll definitely link to all those in the show notes. I've been listening to people you meet outside of bars for like a decade now, I want to say. Maybe more.
Yeah.
And not to be too earnest, but you posting a very long time ago on Tumblr about playing TTRPGs was what inspired me to start playing TTRPGs.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for that, like, sincerely.
That makes me so happy, and I'm so thrilled. That is like, I love games so much, and all I want to do is recruit people into playing games. It's like my life's work, and so the idea that not only happened, but also became something that is clearly like a big part of your life and fulfilling for you is like my absolute dream.
It really is, and I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah.
Satah, thank you so much for coming on Campaign Spotlight.
Thank you. This was wonderful.
That's all for this week. I'm Production Master Riley.
And I'm Dungeon Inspector Jake.
If you enjoy the show, consider subscribing and leaving a review, which helps other people find Campaign Spotlight.
If you'd like to support our work, consider going to patreon.com/campaignspotlight and becoming a patron.
And if you're out in the woods and you find a ring of unfamiliar mushrooms, that's a perfect place to lie down for a nice nap.
For more on the show, including links to all our social media, visit foldedfrequencies.com/campaignspotlight.